We're in a series that we've titled Running on Empty. So just real quick, you can just do this with a show of hands. How many of you are very cautious when it comes to your gas tank in your car, your vehicle? The minute it gets to a half a tank, you go fill up. How many? Are there anyone in this room? Okay, there are some of you. The traditional service, like everyone's hand went up. It was just, older people, I guess. But anyway, all right. Half tank, you head for the gas station. You do not like risk at all. You got a bomb shelter in your backyard and you're just like, I just don't want to take any chances at all. I understand that. Love you. All right. How many of us are quarter tank? The minute it gets to a quarter of a tank, we start looking for a gas station. Is there all right. See, now that's me. That's the way I was raised, quarter of a tank. My dad said that, the fuel pump is lubricated by the gas that's in there. Never let it go below a quarter. You'll burn up your fuel pump. I don't even know if that's true or not. But that's how, I see that and it's like, hey, time to pull over. And that's the way I run. Now, how many in this room, be honest about it, you love to see how far you can go on empty? Come on, who's the risk takers in the room? There you are. You're like, the gauge is lying. There's still gas in there, and the best thing that could ever happen to you is to be pulling into the gas station and have your car cough out of gas right there. How many of you would love that? Yeah, see? You're like the extreme risk takers. Listen, just like on a car, you have to be mindful of where the fuel level is. The same thing is true in our lives. If you and I aren't careful, we could get caught into running on empty. And when you run on empty, the emptiness can really begin to affect us in a negative way. And not only us, but people around us. Because we're dangerously low. And when we're talking about this series running on, this is actually a series about hope. Hope in our life ends up keeping our joy tank filled when you have a lot of hope. But we live in a time right now when hopelessness is grabbing so many hearts out there. We have an emotional tank we learned last week that you have to be mindful of. And when relationships are not healthy in our life, that emotional tank begins to get dangerously low. There's a spiritual tank, and you got to work on keeping that filled. There's a confidence tank. I was surprised at how many young people identified with the confidence tank last week. You don't have a lot of confidence in this world right now. You don't have any confidence in politics or politicians. I share that. And you're just struggling right now with the confidence level in your life. You got to be mindful of that. Relationship tank, a joy tank, a vitality tank. Every one of us in this room from time to time will experience something that is just draining our tanks. And then there's some of us in this room, man, you feel like you're in a war zone right now. Life could just not be worse. That everything around you is a battleground. You're arguing with the spouse. You're struggling with kids. You're fighting to keep a job. You're wrestling with finances. You're losing the battle with weight. You're in a constant conflict, clashing over politics with people you love. And then there's the war that's going on inside of us. You're warring with fears. You're attacked by anxiety. You're fighting depression. You're exhausted. You're tired. You're just empty. And when you get there, by the way, that begins to affect others. It gives you a sour attitude. It makes life miserable. It steals your joy. It robs your rest at night. And Christian people have got to get better at just letting things go. The things we're carrying is just, we're carrying it and it's starting to harm us inside. Life is full of wounded people too, and some of you right now are deeply wounded. And I understand that. People can take a huge chunk out of us. I found a quote. It's not scriptural, but truth is truth. The quote says this: if we don't heal old wounds, we will bleed on people who had nothing to do with it. So can Jesus help? He says he can. So again, just to open up our hearts and our ears this morning to the sweet sound of the voice of Jesus, what does he have to say? And this is a beautiful moment. It could be a life-changing moment for all of us. It's found in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, just real short. Come to me, Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Learn from me. I'm gentle, I'm humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Come to me. What is a yoke, by the way? All right, if you know farm equipment, great, but there's a lot of city slickers here, so let me tell you what a yoke is real quick. Ancient yokes were used to couple two ox together to pull a plow or to pull a heavy load, all right? And the commentaries shared with me that ancient Jews used to couple a mature ox with a very, very young ox to train the young ox. Because the young ox, even though he was pulling some of the load, not that much, all of the heavy burden was on that mature ox. And not only would the weight be carried, but also there was training in how to navigate and how to move through those kind of problems. Now, Jesus just used this as an illustration, this yoke, by the way. He says, my yoke is easy. Jesus is using this ancient illustration as an invitation for you and I to couple ourselves next to him so that he can pull the heavier part of our weight. This is beautiful. In ancient times, it would have meant so much. Back to Matthew 11 here, Jesus comes along and says, whatever's weighing you down, whatever has become a heavy burden, I can help with that. Why does life begin to feel like it's too heavy then all of a sudden? Well, obviously, we're carrying too much. So I go to the rec center and I lift weights there. I'm sure that's obvious to all of you. Yeah, thank you. I just heard a wolf whistle there. There comes a moment when I can't lift it again. I can't. Physically, I can't press it one more time. If I'm doing it with free weights, it requires a spotter to be nearby, someone to stand there. I will do my best to lift this weight, but at some point, I won't be able to do it again. And that's when it's the spotter's responsibility to reach down and grab that bar before it really hurts us. And inside this passage, Matthew 11, Jesus is saying, come to me. You're weary. You got this heavy load. I'll help you. I'll help you with this here. But we're so slow to go to him in these moments. One of the mistakes we make when we're running on empty, when we're feeling burdened in this life, is we're just slow to go to him. That last week I challenged all of us to pray a little more. Just pray more before decisions, before the minute you are here feeling negative thoughts, quickly pray. I challenged us to do that last week. So I did that this week. And there were some prizes for my prayer life. Did I get everything I wanted? No, not even close. Did I get everything I asked for? No. That wasn't the surprise. The surprise in the prayer time was not what I gained. The surprise was what I lost. The more I prayed, the more I lost the anger. The more I prayed, the more I lost the anxiety. The more I prayed, the more I lost the insecurity and the fears of this world. It was really quite surprising. The more I prayed, the fear started going away. and here's Jesus saying, come to me when you're feeling that load. So how you doing in this area? Are you quick? Today, is there something you need to go to him with and say, you know what, I am just carrying way too much here. Jesus knew that there would be all kinds of reasons that would weigh us down in this life. That's the enemy's MO, by the way, is just to put heavy burdens on Christian people too. By the way, just some quick background. In this passage, by the way, this idea of a yoke, Jesus is actually talking in front of Pharisees who had placed a unbearable weight on religious people. Just this unbearable weight of rules and regulations. And here's Jesus saying, that's the weight they put on you. That's not the weight I'm putting on you. You might think that becoming a Christian is all these rules you have to, it's not. Jesus said it wouldn't be. Jesus says there's freedom in following him. There's that heavy weight of religious rules goes away. Just to prove my point, another time Jesus is addressing that idea of weight. In Matthew chapter 23, he's talking to the Pharisees. You Pharisees, you tie up heavy, cumbersome loads. You put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves, those Pharisees, they won't do anything to lift a finger to move them. He's saying you're putting loads on other people that you can't even lift. Later on, the Apostle Peter in early church, the Jewish people at that time who have become Christians, they see all these Gentiles becoming followers of Jesus. And the first thing they start thinking is, you know what, before you can become a good Christian, you need to go back first and become a good Jew. Then you'll be, and so they're trying to bring in these regulations that had been there for years with the Jewish people. The Apostle Peter talks about that, Acts 15. Peter said, why are you testing God to put upon the neck of these Gentiles a yoke that neither our fathers nor we have been able to bear? You know what? This is Peter saying, I couldn't keep the law. Our forefathers couldn't keep the law. You can't keep the law. Why are you putting all these burdens on new believers? And the last thing we want to do here is put burdens on new believers. This all comes back to the words of Jesus saying, just come to me. Now, I'll help you with this lift in your life. You will be so amazed that the problems, that it's not that problems go away in our life, but it's that we have the ability to navigate those problems because we're coupled with him, and he's pulling the heavier part of that problem. But sometimes we carry our problems way too long. Ron, you just don't know how bad I was hurt. Are you sure I don't? You don't understand the deceit. You don't understand the betrayal. You don't understand the violence against my well-being. You don't understand the rot that this person left in my soul. And I may not have experienced what you've experienced, but I understand wounded people. And that wounded, the more we carry it, that poison begins to contaminate our lives. When you encounter a toxic spill, what do you got a couple options. You can bury it, a toxic spill, but sooner or later that toxic spill is going to find its way down into the water line, and it's going to begin to affect a lot of people. Or you can have that toxic spill cleaned up and carried away. And Jesus comes here in this passage and he says, you know what, you can carry this pain if you want, but there are some who have learned to let it go. And you can see the effects of both. I think what ministers to me so much in the sweet words of Jesus is he says, and I will give you rest. He says that twice in that passage. Come to me, all you are heavy burdened, I will give you rest. He says, take my yoke upon you, I'll give you rest for your soul. And I'll bet you there's some of us right now that would like a little rest. But we're trying to run, and it's like trying to run with a pebble in your shoe. You don't want to take the time to give it up. If you walk or run with a pebble in your shoe, you know you can keep going, but that irritant there becomes worse and worse, and it takes the joy out of the walk. It takes the enjoyment out of a jog. But I just don't want to slow down long enough to take that shoe off and allow that stone to be removed, and so you just run with it. Listen to me. Can you keep carrying all your burdens and still go to heaven? Yes. But you're going to steal all the joy out of the journey there because you won't deal with the pebble in your shoe. Some of us we needed to hear Jesus say today, come to me. Let's talk about this. Let me help you lift this off your shoulders, because if you don't lift this burden soon off, you're going to crack, you're going to break. There are relationships here that are right on the edge of just breaking off because you're just not allowing Jesus enough into that heavy lift. I have a pine tree in my backyard. I love pine trees in the winter when the snow starts falling. Look, is Ron really going to talk about snow already? That's the last thing we want to think about, right? But just, you know what I'm talking about. A pine tree covered in snow is beautiful. It's just beautiful. But if that snow keeps falling and if that weight gets heavier and heavier and heavier, sooner or later, because a pine tree is soft wood, that limb is going to snap. And it's going to be lost. I could go out in the middle of the winter, in the middle of the snowstorm, and shake the snow off that limb. I won't, but I could. And then that limb would make it. But I sit in there sometimes and I just watch that heaviness just keep laying there and laying there and laying there until finally that limb is lost. Some of you are, man, it's been snowing in your life for a long time and you're just, you're at the edge of empty, you're at the edge of snapping. And here's the words of Jesus, come to me, come on. Let's you and I do this together. Yeah, today could be a real turning point for all of us. We're going to talk more, we're going to pray more, we're going to spend time with Jesus a little bit more. We're going to let him surprise us in our prayer time. He may not answer all of our requests right away, but you know what? He's going to start working immediately. It might not all be gain, but there might be some losses, and maybe right now you could stand to lose some things and lose your anger and lose your ego. And this is important because, like the truth of that quote from earlier on, if we don't heal old wounds, we will bleed on people who had nothing to do with it. You know what? I'm not always able to heal my old wounds. But we know the name of the one who can.